What is your advice in this moment for President Trump?
Well, a president is a public servant. They are temporary occupants of the office by design. And when your time is up, then it is your job to put the country first and think beyond your own ego and your own interests and your own disappointments. My advice to President Trump is if you want, at this late stage in the game, to be remembered as somebody who put country first, it's time for you to do the same thing.
In your view, it is time for him to concede?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think it was time for him to concede probably the day after the election, or at the latest 2 days after the election. When you look at the numbers objectively, Joe Biden will have won handily. There is no scenario in which any of those states would turn the other way, and certainly not enough to reverse the outcome of the election.
What are these false claims of widespread election fraud doing to our country right now?
The president doesn't like to lose and never admits loss. I'm more troubled by the fact that other Republican officials who clearly know better are going along with this, are humoring him in this fashion. It is one more step in delegitimizing not just the incoming Biden administration, but democracy generally. And that's a dangerous path. We would never accept that out of our own kids behaving that way if they lost, right? I mean, if my daughters in any kind of competition pouted and then accused the other side of cheating when they lost, when there was no evidence of it, we'd scold them. You know, I think that there has been this sense over the last several years that literally anything goes and is justified in order to get power. And that's not unique to the United States. There are strongmen and dictators around the world who think that I can do anything to stay in power. I can kill people, I can throw them in jail, I can run phony elections, I can suppress journalists. But that's not who we're supposed to be. And one of the signals I think that Joe Biden needs to send to the world is that no, those values that we preached and we believed in and subscribed in, we still believe in.
That someone even needs to say what Barack Obama just said is a testament to just how sad our state of affairs has become under Trump. That we even need a former president, or anyone really, to tell Donald Trump that he needs to look beyond his own ego and concede the race that he clearly lost goes to show just how fundamentally anti-democratic this president actually is. All the while, Trump is living in a state of perpetual delusion and refusing to acknowledge the reality that he lost not only by nearly 6 million votes, but an electoral college margin of 306 to 232, which is the same margin that he won by in 2016 and that he himself hailed as a landslide over the course of 4 years. Kellyanne did the same, tweeting 306, landslide, blowout, historic, meaning we don't have to look far to know just how decisive this election really was. Instead, Trump has offered up the same conspiracies that the election was rigged that he's repeated for 4 years. Before even securing the Republican nomination in 2016, he claimed the Iowa caucus was rigged and attacked Ted Cruz, tweeting, based on the fraud committed by Senator Ted Cruz during the Iowa caucus, either a new election should take place or Cruz results nullified. Prior to the 2016 general election, he tweeted, the election is absolutely being rigged by the dishonest and distorted media pushing crooked Hillary, but also at many polling places. Sad. Even after he won the election, he still claimed it was rigged, tweeting, in addition to winning the Electoral College in a landslide, I won the popular vote if you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally. And that was for an election he won. This is what Trump does, and anyone who takes this seriously is basically acknowledging that there's no limit to the amount of times they're willing to be lied to. Consider too the fact that if Trump is actually trying to convince his supporters that he didn't lose the election, that it was taken from him, he's had ample opportunity to actually make that case in court. The Trump campaign has so far taken 25 cases to the courts, and they've lost in all but one of them. Their only win was in Pennsylvania, where they shortened the cure deadline in a certain Pennsylvania county from 9 to 6 days, which had zero impact on the outcome of the race. So if you're claiming a rigged election but have zero proof to back it up, then you're nothing more than a conspiracy theorist. Of course, that won't stop Trump from trying, but it shows, above all else, how much disdain he has for his own supporters. If Trump actually cared about the people whose support he relies on, he wouldn't lead them on a wild goose chase and manipulate them into thinking that there's still hope he'll win, when he knows perfectly well that he won't. But it's not only a matter of him lying to them, he's also exploiting that manipulation for money. He's been sending out campaign emails on an hourly basis demanding donations for his election defense fund, which in actuality is paying down his campaign debt. In other words, he's broke, lied to his supporters they can still win but only with their money, and then used that money not to actually litigate anything, but to pay off his debts. Because again, there is no one that Trump has more disdain for than his own supporters. And beyond money, he's doing it to protect his own ego. He knows full well how bad it looks to have lost to someone who he himself spent months claiming was in cognitive decline and too old and confused and weak, and so rather than accept the humiliation that comes with acknowledging that guy beat him, he'd rather just cry foul and pretend that the election was rigged, because this has nothing to do with reality and everything to do with Trump's ego. Now, Obama does try to appeal to Trump by suggesting that if he wants to be remembered as someone who put country first, then he'd accept the results of the election. But let's be real here, at no point during the entirety of Trump's presidency did he ever put the country first. This entire nightmare has been a self-serving buffet for Donald and his family. His only piece of major legislation was giving himself a tax cut. He spent almost 300 days on the golf course paid for by our tax dollars. His kids sold off more than $100 million in real estate deals. He had foreign dignitaries stay at the Washington, D.C. hotel that he still owns and profits from. The Secret Service spent thousands renting Trump's golf carts. Our military was rerouted to Trump's Turnberry Resort in Scotland to rescue it from bankruptcy. The list goes on and on. So I do take issue with this idea that Trump has the opportunity to put the country ahead of himself, considering that ship has long since sailed. But one thing I do want to make clear is that regardless of whether Trump decides to concede or not, it doesn't matter. He doesn't get to control who becomes the next president, the American people do. The states will certify those results and Joe Biden will take office on January 20th. And Trump can stomp his feet and cry fraud and go full caps lock temper tantrum on Twitter, but his refusal to accept the election results doesn't dictate our reality. The fact is that as much as Trump thinks he's entitled to the office, he's not. Just like announcing election fraud doesn't mean there's actually election fraud. Just like surrounding himself with yes men and sycophants doesn't mean that he's got a mandate to try and cling on to power. This is all the running delusions of a man both drunk with power and unwilling to accept the fact that he's just lost it. So he'll keep up this charade, he'll continue peppering his supporters with emails demanding donations, he'll keep nursing his bruised ego at losing the election in a landslide margin. But the outcome won't change, and he'll leave that office whether it's on his own volition or not. If you like this video, please check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I take a deep dive into the week's most important stories and interview major players in politics, including Kamala Harris, Katie Porter, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Eric Swalwell, Mary Trump, Al Franken, Cory Booker, and many, many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.